start with what you see most Filipinos, even officials or policymakers, are getting wrong about the Chinese thinking in terms of approaching this issue.
What they're getting wrong, I think, first of all, is I think that they think that China is so powerful, so big, that it can just overwhelm us, that we are absolutely no match. We can't do anything to push them back. I think that's the predominant thinking, which is wrong, because I don't think they understand the Chinese psyche.
What is the Chinese psyche?
The Chinese psyche basically is, I've always said this, I've learned, being there for 10 years, is that only two things are important to them. One is saving face.
Reputation.
Yes. It's more than that. It's almost metaphysical almost, It's hard to describe, but in a nutshell, it's saving face.
Parang hiya.
Yes.
Okay.
Something like that.
And number two
But
is?
something a lot deeper than that.
Okay.
Number two is material wealth. That's why I keep on telling people here that all this talk about war, like China is going to attack Taiwan, China is going to attack the Philippines, that's not going to happen.
Why?
For fear of losing face.
In case that actually happens.
Yes.
How
because you have to study history. China ventured into getting involved in a war the last time was in the Korean War. Right? And they came in strong in defense of North Korea. Guess what? They lost a lot of soldiers. They lost a lot.
It didn't go.
They didn't expect that. They didn't expect that. And ever since then, they've always been in the background. They've always been in the background. And as they've grown economically and militarily, it is now that Xi Jinping's time, they are trying to flex their muscles. But in a different way. It's all for show, because they have to show the domestic audience. Everything they do now is for the domestic audience.
Everything they do in the West Philippines.
Yes, or anywhere else in the world, for example, is a show that, well, we are justifying our rule over you, essentially. We are legitimizing our rule over China, essentially. See what we are doing for you, We're legitimizing.
They're projecting themselves before the domestic audience as a very powerful nation.
That's right.
Outside.
And they do that, and they get more aggressive as the domestic woes increase. So if you look at the situation in China right now, they get more aggressive because their woes are growing right now domestically, especially in economics. Because there is some kind of unwritten law or pact in China between the Communist Party and the people. We will give you economic bliss. Just allow us to run things the way we were. But we don't have rights, you don't have this, you don't have that. We're going to monitor you, everything, But that's a quid pro quo. We will give you economic prosperity. See? And that was the unwritten deal they made with the Chinese population.
The so-called social contract with the
That's
people.
right.
Okay.
What's happening now is, wait a minute, the people, especially the younger ones, are saying, wait a minute, that doesn't look right now. If you know the numbers in China, the last time China issued numbers on unemployment was quite a few months back, when a record number of 21% of urban youth were unemployed.
21%.
That's a lot. And they announced that we're going to stop making such announcements. Again, to save face. I told you, to save face. So you can see, and that their property market is deteriorated, because that was the engine behind their miracle economic growth.
So
The property market.
So they wanted a distraction for the domestic.
Of course, they always want to distract, a smokescreen.
But in the meantime, we still have to deal with China in this part of the world. So
That's right. But understand, that's why we have to we should deal with it more aggressively, precisely because this is all for show.
when you say aggressively, what exactly do you mean?
Look what they do. They engage in mob rule. They don't like one-on-one, by the way. One-on-one, if you stand up to them, they will blink because of fear of losing face. One-on-one, they find themselves in a very uncompromising situation. What do? They back off and they come back, Ayungin show, mob rule. We have lots of vessels there. They do it mob rule. See?
The typical
Strength in
bully.
numbers, yeah. That's how they do it, you see? But one-on-one, they will back off. If you stand to them, stand up to them, they will back off. I guarantee you.
So specifically, what are you suggesting in terms of, let's say, dealing with China's aggression whenever we do our resupply missions?
If you study the way they've been dealing with us so far, what have they been using? Water cannons?
Big access, nice.
Axis? Are these articles of war? No. All right? Why? They're afraid of having a military... Read between the lines. They're afraid of getting into a military conflict because they're afraid of being accused of starting a war. All right? What we should do, knowing that, we should precisely be more aggressive. Because remember, the Philippines is acting in self-defense. It is universally accepted that if there is an aggressor or intruder who trespasses, out of self-defense from the aggressor, you're allowed to use lethal force.
So we can actually shoot at them.
Not at them. We can shoot at their rubber boats.
I
and
mean,
make
the
them
vessels,
sink.
the vessels.
Out of self-defense, yes. If they're coming as an act of aggression, I think the UN would concede that that's legitimate. Because that's universally known. That's self-defense. You know? Just like, if, for example, if the PNP issues you a gun license, right? They issue you license to own, right? So you keep it in your house. If there's an intruder, you're allowed, as long as they're facing you, you're allowed to shoot, right? Yes. It's universally known, you know?
You think so far what China's been doing to the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea, the water cannon attacks, the maneuvering...
You know why they do that? Because they see the Philippines' response is very ambivalent. You know, they're laughing at us when we always issue diplomatic protests. Metaphorically, I'll tell you what they're doing. They look at it as a piece of paper, the protest, and they have a metaphorical shredder. They're shredding it.
Yeah.
And so they see, that's all you're going to do? We'll continue to intimidate you and to bully you. That's what they're doing.
But how far do you think China would go?
They're not going to get into a military conflict, no. If you use firearms and fire at their rubber boats, they're going to run away. I guarantee you.
Why?
Look, a simple thing like the floating barrier. Look at a simple thing like that. We cut it. What did they do? Nothing. Because they lost face. If you stand up to them, they will back off.
So the typical approach in terms of standing up to a bully
Yeah.
applies here.
Oh, absolutely. Look what Indonesia did. But my perfect example always is what our neighbor and friend Indonesia has done against China in the history. Widodo was a perfect example. He got fed up with all the illegal Chinese fishing. He rounded up all the illegal Chinese vessels and blew them up on live national television. What did China do? They lost face. To save face, they built Indonesia's first high-speed railway from Bandung to Jakarta. To show the world, see, we're magnanimous, we're a world leader, we help, That's all, that's saving face.
During your stint with the National Security Council, did you actually make such recommendations to be more aggressive?
Absolutely.
And how did they respond to your suggestions?
Dr. Carlos was livid with rage. I mean, she didn't like it at all. We got into quite a few arguments, actually. She actually accused me of being a Washington narrative.
Despite your
Publicly.
Okay.
Yeah, which I resented, you know? Because I'm just following the facts. I told you, I've been a journalist for over 4 decades. I understand objectivity and being impartial.
But from the perspective of strategic communications, how do you make sure that your proposal to be more aggressive in terms of dealing with China, it won't fall into that narrative being used by the propagandists against the Philippines and the United States that we are the ones trying to instigate a war?
No, basically, we're saying this is our decision. You know, we are doing this because we are doing it out of self-defense. And we are willing to do, and we warn you not to try us, to test us, because the United Nations is going to support us if we conduct anything that is deemed as in support of self-defense. All right? That's it. And then keep it open-ended after that. Don't say exactly what you're going to do. Don't telegraph your intentions, your moves, nothing, your actions, your plan. Don't telegraph. Just leave it at that and let them think. Because one thing China hates is being kept in the dark. They hate that.